Okay, welcome to Capital Cosmo, everybody. My name is Danny, and we've got a lot of news to cover today. Our headline story is a fight between Donald Trump and Zelensky. Donald Trump called Zelensky a dictator. Zelensky rebutted back by calling Donald Trump as a person who fell victim to Russian propaganda. We also have news about rumors swirling about Trump leaving NATO in the cold. So if NATO or whatever remains of it decides to prolong the conflict with Russia, the U.S. will simply have no part of it. And then we have some more DOGE news, some more weird news coming out of DOGE. They found $4.7 trillion without any traceability. There is no trackability to $4.7 trillion. There's this tag that's supposed to be implemented on, a budget item. And for $4.7 trillion of it, it is simply not there. So interesting things coming out of DOGE. And of course, we have the precious metals to talk about. So let's just dive right in. Let's talk about our featured story by kicking things off with this article from Newsweek. And it says, is Trump considering leaving NATO? Now, this is unverified, unevidenced claims, but let's go ahead and take a look at it. Let's see this video from Keir Starmer. Let's see what he has to say.
We're facing a generational challenge when it comes to national security. Obviously, the immediate question is the future of Ukraine. And we must continue to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position, whatever happens next, and to make sure that if there is peace, and we all want peace, that it is lasting. I think there's a bigger piece here as well, which is that this isn't just about the front line in Ukraine, it's the front line of Europe and of the United Kingdom. It's about our national security, and I think that we need to do more. We need to step up in terms of our collective response in Europe. And by that I mean capability, by that I mean playing our full part when it comes to the defense of the sovereignty of Ukraine if there's a peace agreement, and of course when it comes to funding and training. So on all those fronts, I want the UK and all European allies to step up and for the
Yeah, so this is basically a call to arms for the rest of Europe now that it seems like the U.S. is exiting the conflict. So let's go ahead and dive into this article here from Newsweek. It says, President Trump's administration left Europeans... Actually, let me make this a little bigger for you guys. It says, President Trump's administration left European leaders reeling last week, prompting an attributed rumor that he was considering withdrawing the United States from NATO. The militaristic pact that has bound the U.S. and Europe since 1949 confirmed talks in Saudi Arabia between Russian and U.S. officials alongside comments made by VP J.D. Vance at the Munich Security Conference have stirred worries that the U.S. relationship with Europe may weaken as Washington pursues a more nationalist agenda. So Newsweek reached out to the White House via email. Saudi talks, which U.S. officials have confirmed Europe will not be a part of, have worried leaders. Before being elected to a second term as president in 2024, Trump indicated a potentially frostier future with European powers, driven by a disparity across the alliance on military spending. So if you recall our live stream from yesterday, Trump talked about how the U.S. funded Ukraine to the tune of $300+ billion. I believe the rest of Europe accounted for about $100 or $150 billion for the rest of the funding. And we'll get into some of Trump's comments justifying why the U.S. may no longer need to have a presence there. And if Europe wants to fight that war, they're more than welcome to, but the U.S. will simply not be a party of it. We will just be a neutral party in the process. So it says here, now with Russian talks on the way, unverified sourceless rumors spread on social media that the president was planning to withdraw from NATO. Political commentator Dominic Michael Trippi posted Sunday on X Breaking, Donald Trump is reportedly considering withdrawing the U.S. from NATO. Neither this nor similar posts by other comments include references or to verified information. So let's see what Trump has to say about NATO. At a rally in South Carolina in 2024, Trump said he told NATO summit discussions that the U.S. would not protect NATO allies if they did not increase their defense spending. So the writing is kind of on the wall. Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat what you guys think. Give me a 1 in the chat if you think that that the U.S. has a greater than 50% chance of leaving NATO. Give me a 0 otherwise. Really interested in getting your takes. And if you're watching the pre-recorded version, then let me know in the comments as well. And also, I will be taking super chats at the end of the show, and I will be reading a few comments here and there that catch my eye. But if the comments are just way too much, then I just simply won't be able to get to them. But to ensure that you get your question or comment read, then drop me a super chat down below if you want your comment read here on the live stream. It also goes into helping support me and fund this channel. So let's go ahead and continue. I said, everybody's got to pay, they said. They said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not. This is Trump. They couldn't believe the answer, Trump said. NATO's charter states if a NATO nation is invaded, then all other members, including the U.S., are obligated to treat the invasion as if it were an attack on themselves. So let's go ahead and dive into what has driven the recent speculation, because I have seen this on a number of accounts. I don't know if you have. Let me know. Let me also know if you guys have seen this on X or anywhere else. Have you heard these rumors about an imminent or a coming exit out of NATO? So it says here, one of the commentators who spread the claim, the person we just referenced, Dominic Michael Trippi, cited news stories and follow-up social media posts when asked for evidence to support the allegation. Although plenty of commentary has followed the Trump administration's talks in Europe, the substance of recent NATO withdrawal claims seem based on analysis and prediction. In an interview with British broadcaster LBC on February 13, Trump's former security advisor, John Bolton, said the president was using the bid to end the Ukraine war as a path toward NATO withdrawal. So say what you will about John Bolton. He definitely has an axe to grind with Trump, so keep that in mind. So he's of the opinion that, yes, the U.S. will leave NATO. I think it's highly probable that Trump will try and withdraw the U.S. from NATO, and he has already been setting the preconditions that will justify it, Bolton said. You know, first he said back in his initial term, all these Europeans are not spending 2% of GDP on defense, which they pledged to do at the Cardiff NATO summit. Now he's saying you need to spend 5% on GDP on defense. I personally think that's what the U.S. should spend. I think, okay. So Bolton seems to be of the opinion that Trump is at the tail end of his tenure with NATO. Elsewhere, Ukrainian President Zelensky has evoked the possibility of a withdrawal, warning that Russia would invade European nations if the U.S. pulled out of the alliance. Zelensky said that if Putin was waiting for a weakening of NATO by, for instance, policy of the U.S. The Ukrainian leader claimed Ukraine has information that has led it to believe that there could be an invasion of some NATO countries that had been Soviet republics. Now, I've heard this many times. This isn't the first time me hearing about this. These claims have been out there for a few years now, since the start of the Ukraine war, that Putin was, any moment, once Ukraine fell, he was going to go and invade the continent and even go as far as to take Germany to get back in Leningrad or something like that. But I mean, they say they have information that leads them to believe so, but who knows? I mean, today we live in an age of propaganda from both sides. It is the age of deception, my friends. So take whatever you read from either side with a grain of salt. Charles Kupchan, a senior fellow at the CFR, the Council of Foreign Relations. Now, for all of you conspiracy heads out there, the CFR is, especially with some of the older people in the crowd, the CFR was kind of like what the World Economic Forum is today. It was the big round table. It was the big think tank back in the day where all of the big leaders went to get their marching orders. As a matter of fact, Dick Cheney even said so when he was vice president, that he would go to the CFR to get his foreign policy orders. So whether or not the CFR still holds enough sway and influence today, I'm not so sure about that. I believe other think tanks have come into the fold and kind of left the CFR in the dust. But this guy, who was a senior fellow at the CFR, told Newsweek in November 2024, I do not expect Trump to withdraw from NATO. I doubt he wants to be remembered as the U.S. president who dismantled the Western alliance. So that is a good point. But it is also another good point that he could be replacing the current Western alliance with a United States-Russian alliance. Now, this idea has been floated for many years now, and it was actually something Nixon tried to do in a different form back in his day, which was to separate Russia and China from one another. This could be Trump's plan. Trump could decide that Europe is just too much heavyweight. It's just dead weight. They're not carrying their weight. I'm just trying to get into the mind of Trump. So for all of you European viewers out there, I'm not calling you guys dead weight, but I'm just trying to think in terms of how he would think. And I could see him rationalize it with, well, Russia, their economy's been stomped on for the last 4 years, and it's just ready to I mean, it's held on, and it's ready to skyrocket once these sanctions are lifted. Russia does also have collateral, has commodities. It's not just a gas station, but sure, it has 100 million people, but Europe does not have collateral. Europe has a very slow and stagnant economy, largely socialist, so it's not as dynamic as the United States, and it's fallen behind. So the other aspect to this could be that Trump could be eyeing, yes, he could be known as the president that ends the Western alliance, but by that same token, he could be known as the president that starts a newer and possibly better economic alliance with Russia that also weakens China. I can't see Russia and the U.S. becoming, Russia going against China, but at the very maximum, Russia could become a neutral party within a U.S.-China conflict. So Russian aggression against the Ukraine and the continuing threat Moscow poses to European stability, even if Trump is able to end the war in Ukraine, provides ample reason to keep U.S. forces in Europe. So speculation on both sides. Bolton thinks he will leave. The CFR guy thinks otherwise. So what do you guys think? Let me know. Let me know in the chat what you guys think. This is next up. We have a video here from, I believe this is a British newscast, and they're talking about conscription. Let's go ahead and see what they have to say.
British Army officer Sir Richard Shirreff has said this morning that Donald Trump has left Britain with simply no choice but to plan for conscription. Former British Army officer Sir Richard.
Yeah, so they're planting the seeds, guys. They're planting the seeds. We have another article here. This is from the Times, and it says Germans must bite the bullet and bring back conscription. So let's see what this article is all about. And it says Germany must return to conscription and more than double its regular military spending to avert a Russian attack on NATO that could come in as little as 4 years. So that's 2029. Its defense minister has said. So that's interesting timing. Are they saying that once Trump is out of office, Putin kind of become loose? He kind of lets Putin go off loose onto Europe. And also recall from our previous stream a couple of days back, Britain has been also calling, I mean, we just saw the broadcast, but Keir Starmer has called for British deployment of troops in Ukraine as well, by the tune of 40,000 and 100,000 plus peacekeeping force, a European peacekeeping force in Ukraine. And now you have this from the Times. In an interview with the Times, Boris Pistorius said his country should bite the bullet and take a giant leap forward to revive its stagnant economy by borrowing money on a large scale to invest in military. Pistorius said a return to some form of compulsory military service was essential after his ministry estimated that NATO would require Germany to field almost 500,000 troops if it came under attack. Now, hold on a second. I don't know these numbers off the top of my head, so if you guys can help me out here, I'd appreciate it. But I know Russia has the largest holdings of nukes in the entire world, followed by the United States. Now, if you add up all of the countries in Europe and the UK, how many nukes do they have between them all? Just really curious. Drop it in the chat or drop it in the comments if you know. Just want to get a gauge in terms of the power balance here. Yeah, sure, Russia is one country that could go up against many European countries, but in terms of artillery, which they've shown they can produce en masse and in rapid fashion, as well as their nuclear capacity, it's still, I mean, those are two big proponents to take into consideration. We need an honest debate about the fact that we must incur debt now to ensure our security. This is an investment in our future and our children's future, because ultimately security is the foundation for everything else, our prosperity, our society, blah, 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 European way of life. Germany and its neighbors are reeling from a week in which the Trump administration cast doubt on the foundations of NATO and the transatlantic bargain that has propped up Europe's security since the end of the Second World War. So Germany's starting to panic. The UK started to panic. And pretty much all of the rest of Europe, they're not getting what they want. They want the United States to protect them. They want the United States there to fight the war in Ukraine, but it's no bueno. Doesn't look like it. Pistorius, the Social Democrats, the party of Olaf Scholz, the chancellor, was plucked from the regional politics of Lower Saxony and made the German military commander-in-chief only 2 years ago. He has become the public face of a paradigm shift. So I guess this is him, Pistorius. Oh, he's coming out of the submarine. Oh, doesn't France or Germany, don't they have nuclear capable submarines? I believe that's part of their nuclear payload. I'm not so sure about that, but he says here on a U-31 submarine, he said that the danger was at least as serious today as it was when he served as a conscript in 1980. I mean, it's so weird. Like, I don't know, like with European culture, they don't have that edge to them like Americans do. So like when they try to act tough, like it just doesn't come across as intimidating. I don't know. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but that's just the way I see it. His blunt assessments of the threat and the urgent need for Germany to respond have often made him a lonely voice in the cabinet, but they have also made him by far the country's most popular politician. While his party is trailing in the polls, he is widely expected to remain in post after the election and to blah, blah, blah. Anything else? All right, so let's look at this chart here. The funding gap. So the German defense funding in relation to the NATO target. So in blue, you've got the regular defense budget. And the black line here is your target, needed to hit NATO 2% target. And then in orange is your defense-related spending by other ministries, rearmament fund. So yeah, they haven't been hitting their target since in 2022 and neither in 2024, but they are anticipated to hit their defense spending target to meet their 2% goal in, I believe that's 2025, 2026, but then it diminishes back down in 2028. Another big difference between now and 1980 is that at that time, West Germany spent 3% of its GDP on defense. How much? I think that's pretty much what I'm trying to get at here, guys. So Germany has begun to take serious the notion that they may have to fight this war on their own, along with the rest of Europe. Here's another tweet here. This is from Kaja Kallas. And she is an EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs, and she is the Vice President of the European Commission. And she said, let's see what we got here. Whoops, And she said, together with the European ministries, I spoke to Secretary Rubio after his talks in Riyadh. Russia will try to divide us. Let's not walk into their traps. By working together with the U.S., we can achieve a just and lasting peace. And I looked into this, but she never really went into detail as to what they spoke about. Like, yes, he spoke with Rubio, but doesn't really say what they spoke about. So that'd be really interesting. Here's not like here. Rubio is another thing, guys. It's like I am quite surprised with Rubio. I was personally, I know this is all analysis, not supposed to be commentary, but my personal commentary for a second. I've been pleasantly surprised with Rubio. A lot of us anticipated him being a neocon hawk. That was the main concern. But he's shown a pretty savvy sense of diplomacy so far. So Rubio has surprised a lot of us, I believe. So I hope he keeps it up because the war hawkish Rubio, we don't want him. Yeah, so let's go ahead and dive into our next news item here. This is okay, so this is President Putin from today. And it says here, President Putin announces that Russia and the United States have officially agreed to restore diplomatic relations. Let's see what he has to say.
Выдворение дипломатов из Вашингтона, из Москвы ни к чему хорошему не приводит. У нас, если так дело дальше пойдет, в этих зданиях будут работать только одни уборщицы. Чей труд тоже, безусловно, надо ценить, но это не то, ради чего создаются дипломатические представительства. Это первое. Договорились возобновить.
Right. So Putin seems cautiously optimistic, I'd say. Just from there's more hope in his eyes today than there was 5 weeks ago, let's say. And there was a time, and this was like maybe a few months back, or maybe even longer than that, maybe a year ago, where if you've been keeping up with the war, some of the stuff that Medvedev was saying, some of the stuff that was coming out of the Kremlin, they seem kind of given into an all-out war with NATO. They would be threatening to nuke Europe and the UK almost on a daily basis. And if you take into considerations the art of war, you always want to act strong when you're weak. I'm not saying Russia is weak in this case, but the fact that they constantly had to bring up the nuke thing, it just told you where they were. Because sure, artillery was a big advantage for Russia, but the fact that they always had to go back to the nukes, that was a pretty telling sign that they were backed into a corner. Because if you recall in World War II, the nukes came at the end. The nukes are kind of like your last resort. You know, if you're in an argument with a buddy of yours, you know, you don't just pull out a firearm, you know, right at the get-go. It's only if he starts threatening your life with like another weapon that, you know, you have to defend yourself. So the fact that the Russians were getting to that point was very telling. And we have more news so this is from The Guardian. It says here, Britain and France working on plans for a reassurance force to protect Ukraine. So yes, more stories on a European front. So it looks like the U.S. is passing the baton over to Europe. So let's go ahead and take a quick read and see what they have to say here. It says Britain and France are leading the efforts to create a European reassurance force intended to prevent future Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities, ports, and critical infrastructure in the event of a U.S. brokered peace deal. The proposal, Western officials said, would involve less than 30,000 troops. Well, it was 100,000 as a couple of days ago, so I guess they've revised that, and would be likely concentrated on air and maritime force. Ground forces would be minimal and not deployed near the front line. And here's another thing. This is when details really matter. If they are to be designated, as NATO forces, this is going to be a no-go. This is going to be no bueno for Russia. They have to be designated as, if I'm reading the Russians correctly, they would have to be designated as non-Western forces, or at the very minimum, non-NATO forces. So it can't be a NATO entity, because then you have the whole Article 5 thing. And if the U.S. is still in NATO, then the U.S., it just ruins everything. It just sours everything. So that's another detail that needs to be taken into account. Among the aims of the force would be to ensure the safe reopening of Ukraine's airspace to commercial flights and to maintain the security of the seaborne trade over the Black Sea, critical to the country's food and grain exports. Now, hold on a second. If memory serves me correctly, the map that's being drawn out, or the map that's being rumored to being drawn out, would give Russia all of the Black Sea ports. It would obviously give Crimea to Russia, but I believe it gives all of the Black Sea ports to Russia. So this is assuming that map doesn't come into fruition, which if I were a betting man, I'd bet against it. So I guess this is just being hopeful here. Ukraine's electricity and other utilities have been reportedly bombed by Russia during the near 3-year war, and maintaining their integrity is also deemed critical to the recovery of the country if the conflict is brought to a close. So, let's see what Pete Hegseth had to say. Pete Hegseth said there will not be U.S. troops deployed into Ukraine. So that's what I'm talking about. It would have to be a European force. It can't be a NATO force. The U.S. can have no ties to it. And if it is a NATO force, it would be a NATO without the United States. So the size of European militaries remain modest, meaning that any post-war security effort would have to be in the low tens of thousands and focused on areas of technological superiority. Keir Starmer, so let's see what Keir Starmer had to say. Keir Starmer is due to fly out to Washington next week to lobby the U.S. president. So yeah, they're coming out of the woodwork. President Trump directly and persuade him to agree to providing a backstop that would ensure the European reassurance force would not be challenged by Russia in the future. The French President Macron also due to visit Washington next week. So both Macron and Starmer coming in to make their case for Trump. Russia, meanwhile, has said publicly it objects to any NATO country deploying in Ukraine in the event that at the end of the war. So we'll see what happens. This is, I don't think they're going to have much luck. I mean, what leverage do France and the UK have? I don't see much leverage, honestly. If they do, I mean, I'm unaware of it. Let me know in the comment section, but I can't think of any leverage that they would hold. Oh, this is where it gets interesting. So Zelensky, and I really, really question. I'm really not trying to dig into Zelensky in Ukraine, because I'm trying to stay objective and keep it just purely analysis and no commentary. But Zelensky went and probably did the stupidest thing you could do, and that is go after Trump and verbally berate Trump. Are you kidding me? Let's go ahead and listen to what he has to say.
Сполучені Штати окремо всього. Сполучені Штати Америки дали нам на сьогодні біля 60 мільярдів, те, що ми отримали зброю, і ми отримали ще плюс 67 зброї і 31,5 – це пряма фінансова допомога в бюджет. Були якісь окремі програми. Безумовно, вдячні за всі ці гуманітарні програми, але це не можна нараховувати 500 мільярдів. Ось це все коштувало 500 мільярдів, і поверніть нам 500 мільярдів мінералом або чимось там тощо. Це не серйозна розмова.
Yeah. So he's basically talking about Trump's comments about the rare earth minerals in Ukraine. And I believe there was another post here. Let's see. there's another post where he said that Trump was fallen victim into Russian propaganda. I thought that was the post there, but anyways, I'll post it in the links down below. But he effectively said that there was that Trump was being manipulated by Russian propaganda, who's falling victim to it, and the $500 billion in minerals that would need to be given to the U.S. to repay all of the financial aid that was given to Ukraine. This is all nonsense, because you simply can't do something like this. And so Trump went on Truth Social and verbally berated Zelensky back, calling him a dictator. So let's see what Trump had to say here. Okay. Can you guys see this? So he says, think of it, a modestly successful comedian, Zelensky, talked to the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, will never be able to settle. The U.S. has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed, while the U.S. will get nothing back. Why didn't sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization? In that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us. We have a big, beautiful ocean as separation. On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is missing. Remember, in an interview a couple weeks back, Zelensky said $100 billion of the money was just gone. He didn't know where it went. He refuses to have elections. Is very low in the Ukraine polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast, or he is not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the Ukraine war with Russia, something I'll admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wanted to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions have unnecessarily died. And so it continues. You know, it's on a side note. I kind of miss the old Trump on Twitter from back in the day, because now it's like all of this, he's like paragraph after paragraph, but like back in the day, it was just like one-liners and zingers. Yeah, I appreciate the extra detail, but it just loses its potency that it once had. But yeah, I mean, as Trump's issue was that, number one, $100 billion or so was missing from the U.S. funds, and the U.S. was funding the vast majority of the war, to which not much skin was in the game relative to Europe. And now he called him a dictator, and he said we should have, essentially new elections in Ukraine. Remember, Zelensky canceled elections about a year ago, and that's what Trump was talking about. Oh, so here it is. So this is the video I was telling you guys about.
Only Trump is going to be a dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast, or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast, because that war is going in the wrong direction. In the meantime, we're successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia. Something I'll admit that only Trump is going to be able to do in the Trump administration. We're going to be able to do it. I think Putin even admitted that. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I don't know what's the problem, but he hasn't been able. He's very upset that he wasn't invited. He could have come if he wanted to, but that he wasn't invited to Saudi Arabia. But he's been working for 3 years. There's never been even meetings or phone calls to stop this war. It's a horrible thing. I figure Russia's lost 900,000 soldiers. I think that Ukraine's lost probably 700,000. And it's a terrible thing. You'll see bodies and body parts all over the field, all over. We see them very accurately through satellites. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions of people have unnecessarily died. And you can't bring a war to an end if you don't talk to both sides. You got to talk. They haven't been talking for 3 years. So we hope to see a ceasefire soon and to reestablish stability in Europe. And
Yeah. So I don't know what Zelensky was, what he had in his mind, what the grand strategy was there, but you don't want to pick a fight with Trump, especially when he's the president of the United States. But it is my belief that he will play ball eventually. Otherwise, Trump could let DOGE loose on Zelensky, on Ukraine funding, to get to the bottom of as to where that funding went. So Elon's been going through all of these agencies and finding all sorts of weird things and discrepancies. And I know a lot of people, and this is going to segue us into the next part of the show, which is our DOGE part of the show. We're going to talk about some weird findings. $4.7 trillion gone missing. So to kind of wrap up the geopolitics portion of our show today, I could easily see Trump just kind of letting Elon loose on the Ukraine funding and seeing where it really went to. Where was it really funneled into? Very mysterious. Now, I know a lot of people, are very skeptical of Elon, and I am not fully trusting of Elon. I think Elon has his own agenda. And the argument often goes, some say that, yes, it's a great thing that he's firing all of these bureaucrats, he's cutting all of this wasteful spending and corruption, but is the end game to replace it all with AI? Is that a better alternative? So let me know in the comments what you think of that. Do you think that is the end game? Do you think there's a different end game? Do you think it's genuine? Let me know in the comments section. Let me know in the chat what you guys think. So let's go ahead and move over to our DOGE section. And this is this is another clip here. Let's go ahead and see what he has to say.
In less than a single month, the Department of Government Efficiency has already saved over this is just a short period of time, $55 billion. And we're just getting started. That's nothing compared to the numbers that you're talking about, right? We're ending trillions of dollars in waste, and it'll mean much lower inflation, lower interest rates, lower payments on mortgages, credit cards, car loans, and much higher stock markets. I think the stock market's going to be great. In other words, we will rapidly grow our economy by dramatically shrinking the federal government, and we have to do it. In less than a single month, the Department of Government Efficiency has already saved over this is just a short period of time, $55 billion. And we're just getting started. That's nothing compared to the numbers that you're talking about, right? We're ending trillions of dollars in waste, and it'll mean much lower inflation, lower interest rates, lower payments on mortgages, credit cards, car loans, and much higher stock markets. I think the stock market's going to be great. In other words, we will rapidly grow our economy by dramatically shrinking the federal government, and we have to do it. In less than a single month, the Department of...
All right. So, yeah. So the whole objective behind DOGE, and you heard it here, they've basically found about $55 billion worth of waste and abuse and all this other stuff that they're about to cut. Now, keep in mind that the annual deficit is $2 trillion. So that's it's a little over 2.5% of the total annual deficit. So they still have a long ways to go to have any meaningful impact. So just to kind of keep it into context and give you guys some color. And another thing, this aligns perfectly with Bessent, as Secretary of Treasury, and Trump's stated goal, which is to bring down the 10-year yield, to bring down interest rates. Interest rates have not been coming down just by simply lowering the Fed funds rate, which is what the Fed has been doing. They've been able to lower the short-term rates, but not the long-term rates, a 10-year yield, which is what a bunch of this is where the interest rate to buy a home, to loan a car, they're all based off of the 10-year. And so their objective is to bring down the deficit significantly to the point where you bring down the debt, you lower the yield as well. So you bring down interest rates by bringing down the debt. And who does that benefit? Well, it benefits people like Elon. It benefits people like Peter Thiel. It benefits the Mark Andreessen types that backs him, the David Sachs, the Chamath Palihapitiya. So the PayPal mafia, they all benefit from lower interest rates because it enables more speculative buying of tech stocks. So if you're like one of these venture capital guys who invests in all these speculative tech names, then what you do, here's what they do. They buy many different, they bid on many different technology startups, knowing that a good chunk of them are going to fail. But they loan out the money knowing that all it takes is one or two or a handful to make up for all the other losses. Because when these tech companies, when these tech startups really make it, they make it. It's a very leveraged play. It's kind of like my like how I work commodity stocks. You or many other people. I mean, it's not something that I do, but they loan out their money to many different tech-based startups, and eventually one or two or three of those will make it. So they need the lower interest rates to do that. So that's the entire rationale. And that was a big vote. That was a big block. That was a big supporting block that Trump had leading up into the election. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just showing you the entirety of the picture. This is the entire rationale behind it. But yes, they do need to cut a lot more. 1.95 or they do need to cut about $1.9 trillion more. I mean, $1.95 trillion more actually to make it to clear out the annual deficit. So let's see what else we got here. I think the next one is so this is one of our main stories today, and it says here that DOGE discovers $4.7 trillion, and this is from the New York Post. So DOGE discovers $4.7 trillion in treasury payments were missing. Critical code, traceability almost impossible. So there is this critical code that's attached to all of these budget items that were not there. So let's see what it has. So let's see what the article says. The DOGE department announced Monday that some $4.7 trillion in payments from the Treasury Department were missing a critical tracking code, which made tracing the transactions almost impossible. 4.7 trillion. The transactions were reportedly missing the Treasury account symbol, or TAS, an identification code which links a Treasury payment to a budget line item. According to DOGE, which describes the use of such code as a standard financial process. In the federal government, the TAS field was optional for $4.7 trillion in payments and was often left blank. So they left it blank, making the trackability almost impossible. So read an ex post from DOGE. Let's see. All right. So Elon Musk led project to curb waste, fraud, and abuse, and the federal government said in light of the discovery, use of the TAS code is now mandatory. So they're mandating the TAS code be applied to every budget item. As of Saturday, this is now a required field, increasing insights into where money is actually going. DOGE said, thanking the Treasury Department for its great work implementing the change. Musk touted the change as a major improvement in Treasury payment integrity. This was a combined effort of DOGE, Treasury, and the Federal Reserve, Musk tweeted. Nice work by all. That's very interesting. The Federal Reserve, which is not a government entity, by the way, which is a lot of you know, but a lot of you may not also know. The Treasury Department, which facilitates trillions of dollars worth of government payments every year, was one of the first agencies DOGE embedded itself in after President Trump's inauguration. DOGE staffers at Treasury have been granted access to the department's highly sensitive payment systems in an effort to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think you guys get the picture here. Let's read one more line. This is not some roving band. This is a methodical, and it is going to yield big savings. This is from Treasury Secretary Scott Bissett. DOGE recently proposed deleting paper checks at the treasuries, arguing that could save taxpayers at least $750 million per year. Yeah, I mean, it's better than letting it go to waste. But again, $750 million a year in the context of $2 trillion. They're going to have to need to pick up the pace here a bit. The initiative noted that the Treasury Department must keep a physical lockbox to collect more than 100 million checks it processes each year, which costs about $2.40 per check to maintain. In fiscal year 2023, some $25 billion in tax refunds were delayed or lost. Okay, so $4.7 trillion lost or not, or just not trackable. And so the question is why? Why would they not implement these tracking codes? It's very weird. Let me know your thoughts, guys. What's going on over there, or what has been going on over there? And so, yeah, with DOGE, it is many parties stand to benefit from it. We could be beneficiaries from it as well, but the main reason that it's being done is to benefit the tech oligarchs that backed Trump back in the election, which is the Silicon Valley side of things. All right, so we're going to pivot over to silver now. The precious metals news is from Bob Coleman here on Twitter, and he says, attention, all those who are trading the EFP on silver equals short COMEX futures contracts and long spot or spot deferred contracts, meaning they do not have the metal, but rather a promise from a counterparty. Let the following sink in. So this is from another user, Nix SA84, and she's writing that January silver outflow from the LBMA vault was a staggering minus 71 million ounces. So this is the largest on record. This is the largest outflow out of the LBMA for silver. It brought the monthly pace of outflows since Trump threatened tariffs to minus 33 million ounces a month. And with LBMA holdings at 760 million ounces, it will only take 22 days versus gold's 100 days for the current pace to drain all of London's silver. So we could very well face a situation where silver drains before. I mean, gold has been draining from the LBMA at record pace, but silver is poised to overtake it. So this is a chart here. And in gray, you've got the LBMA silver holdings. And as you can see here, it's close to almost $50 million ounces for the month of December. So something is going on. If you haven't seen my interview with Ed Steer, that is a banger of an interview, guys. You need to check it out. He talks about all this stuff. And Ed's been doing this for quite some time. Probably even longer than I've been alive. And he said he has never seen anything like this before. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the precious metals did today. Silver's at $33.11, still banging its head on this $33 handle. There is a lot of resistance here, as you can see. A lot of price action. And anytime we go above it, we go above that $33 level, we get smashed right back down. Gold on the other side it's flirting with that $3,000 level. And it has the momentum, but it's struggling. It's struggling to get, because 3,000, I think why 3,000 is so important is that the powers that be, or whoever wants to keep the price of gold down, they have to keep it down below 3,000. Because 3,000 is like this round, nice psychological number. Once you break 3,000, that's when you get the attention of more retail buyers. Right now, gold has been making new all-time highs for months. Even the last year, no one talks about it. There's no mention about it. There's barely any mention about it on CNBC. Not one of your normie friends talk to you about gold or silver, despite making new all-time highs. But once you hit that $3,000 level, this is what's going to happen. All of these news sites, they're going to report on it because it's a nice story. They're going to say gold breaks $3,000 because it makes a better headline than saying gold breaks $2,900 or gold breaks $2,800. You see what I mean? And it drives more attention to it. So strap in, guys. It's going to get wild. So that concludes the monologue portion of this this show. I'm going to look at the chat here in a second, see what you guys had to say. Again, if you want to ask me a question and make sure that it gets put on screen and answered by me, then drop a super chat. I will read the super chats. But otherwise, I'll just scroll through the comments here and pick apart what I think is interesting. Before we move into that, I want to again encourage you guys to take advantage of a special offer we have with Capitalist Exploits to save you $1,000 on their newsletter Insider. They are my investing newsletter of choice. I've used them for 5+ years. They are what got me into the commodity space, the precious metal space. Most of my education, most of my finance and investing education actually came from these guys. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an affiliate, but because they didn't reach out to me, I reached out to them because I believed in their newsletter. And it's a little expensive, but you're gonna get your money's worth. So they have this little counter here. Just ignore that. There is no rush. I don't know why that's still there, but you can apply the $1,000 discount whenever you're ready, if you ever feel ready. But they have a 5-star rating on Trustpilot, and they really think outside of the box. Some of the investing ideas that Chris and Brad come up with, like Argentinian stocks back in 2021, and I can't mention some of the stocks that they have listed now, obviously, but it's not your typical gold stocks or silver stocks or copper stocks. They think way outside the box here. So I have to encourage you to check them out. Here's a little performance visual of how well they've done. They're the blue up here, and they've managed to beat the market for the last 5 years or so. Both the NASDAQ and the S&P. Not many people can claim that. And I think what the most important part of it is not just you get access to their portfolio. They've got 2 separate portfolios that they give you access to. One is a capital gains portfolio that targets returns. They amplify. It's a portfolio crafted to bring about strong returns. Then there's an income portfolio that's crafted for dividends. So you can kind of mess around with both portfolios and see what works with you. They also send out weekly newsletters, educational videos, not just on what's going on today, but just how to look at stocks, how to read stocks, how to figure out where you can figure out asymmetric opportunities. Monthly Q&A where you get to ask them questions. They got a Slack community forum. Again, I can't recommend them enough. And also be sure to check out our good friends over at Dirty Man Safe and get a 10% discount by clicking the link down below. The way Dirty Man Safe works is, you're stacking your gold, you're stacking your silver, but not just your gold and silver, like any possession that's valuable to you. You want to bury it underground, but this makes the process so much more easy. Let's go ahead and see how it works. So you're going to dig a hole underground, and you've got a tubular module here. This is where you put your valuables, by the way. You stick it in the tubular module, and there's a string that runs through this top, and then you're going to bury this thing. And when you pick it back up, it's very easy. So when you dig it back up, whenever you need to, boom, you just pull on the string, and there are your valuables. Very simple. And again, you get a 10% discount if you guys are interested. So that is what I have. Let's go ahead and read some of the chats here, guys. Let's see what you guys have to say. Let's see. Okay. All right, Jupiter says, sometimes a controversial statement can be used to determine where the loyalty of the subject lies. That is true, I guess. The Postman says, NATO needs the U.S. The U.S. doesn't need NATO. I think you might be onto something. Let's see. All right, so this is from Charles A. Mad Dogs Macron and Starmer will succeed in initiating a Euro war against Russia. You think so? Do you guys think we're going to get a war between Europe and Russia? Or do you think this is all one big bluff on the part of Europe? Let me know in the comments. The Postman also says, leave Russia alone, and Russia will leave the rest of the world alone. Pat Leftar says, the nukes in the UK don't even work. Tried and tested. Floppy balloons. Oh, I can't post that, Matt Bittner. What would, okay, so, oh, interesting. What would U.S. do if Mexico joined with Russia and China was what would U.S. do if Mexico joined with Russia and China was being armed by them and was asking for nukes? If Mexico is asking for nukes from China? Oh, joined with Russia and China and was being armed by them and was asking for nukes. Yeah, that's a perfect allegory of what transpired the last 3 years. There was even a point where Ukraine was dabbling with asking NATO for tactical nuclear weapons. And here's the problem with alliances, guys. This is probably why the Ukraine war failed on the part of NATO and Ukraine, is because you're never going to give your best weaponry to your allies. You're going to keep the good stuff to yourself. So what's been going on, especially with Europe, sure, they're giving them like these old tanks from like 30 or 40 years ago. They're dusting off this old weaponry and military regalia. So it's no wonder that Ukraine simply couldn't hold off. Let's see here. Some John Doe says Europe has around 500 nukes. Just checked. Cool. Yeah. So I think Russia has like what, 2,000? 2,500 or something like that. So yeah, they still outnumber. I mean, but how many nukes do you really need to take out a country? I mean, 500 should be more than enough. But you also got to take into account the yield of these nukes. I don't know if you guys have seen the Tsar Bomba, but this was a Russian nuke that was tested back in the 60s or 70s, I want to say. And it was supposed to be a 100 megaton nuclear explosion, but they had to downscale it to a 50 megaton explosion. Simply because the pilot that was carrying the bomb on the plane wouldn't have enough time to escape before the nuclear explosion encapsulated him. So they had to scale it down to a 50 megaton bomb. But even when they did that, the entire Earth reverberated twice. You could feel reverberations on the opposite side of the Earth. I mean, they felt reverberations of this bomb being blown up somewhere in Siberia, I believe, or in the North Pole, somewhere out there. They felt it all the way in South America twice. It reverberated around the planet multiple times. So it's another thing you have to keep in mind. Let's see. Russia wanted to join NATO, but the U.S. government said no. Yeah, Putin said that in his speech. This was back during the Clinton days, I believe. All right. So the Postman says, I heard Russia has 4,000 plus nukes. Really? That's a lot more than I thought. I don't know. Well, whether it be 2,000 or 4,000, I mean, it's sufficiently high. All right, guys. Well, that's all I got. Thank you again for watching. Give us a like and subscribe. Boost us in the algorithm. That would do me a major solid. It's a free way to support the show. But if you do want to support us monetarily, you can check out the sponsors that we just laid out, or you can, you can send a super chat or check out our Substack at capitalcosm.substack.com. It's actually on the screen right down there. It's $8 a month, $80 a year, and you get access to all of my content, all my interview content, early before the YouTube audience, and ad-free and uncensored for those that warrant it. And it's also a way to support the show. So if you want to support the show and get a little, cream on the top as well, you could always just support me by buying a Substack. So that's all I got. Thanks for watching. See you later.